Hello, it is I, the awkward GM Corbin, and today we are going to be covering Scion God, specifically character creation, but I do want to cover a few things as far as what's been going on at Onyx Path for the last month or so. Well, as you know, the Curseborn Kickstarter just finished with a massive success, raising 196,000 over 900 over $196,000 of their $30,000 stretch goal, with 15 stretch goals unlocked, which was awesome. There are some. Let's see what else we got here. Oh, there was a Monday meeting notes. Trinity Continuum Player's Guide came out a couple weeks back. I did mention that when it happened, but if you missed out on it, feel free to check it out as well. If I go down here to the bottom of the list at Monday meeting notes, I can see that the next thing that's coming out is this Wednesday, Exalted Sidereels Charting Fate's course. Print on demand and PDF versions will be available. I have an awesome cover. I do say so myself. In any case, thank you for listening to that little prattle for a bit, and we shall continue to Scion God 2nd Edition. Now, the cover, I remember, if you missed out on that, is the original cover art from 1st edition, I do believe. Correct me if I'm wrong on that regard. Any case, so we're going to continue on to character creation. So we've got Game of Immortals, where we talk about after a character has achieved godhood. Scions who choose to chase down divinity do so out of hunger, pain, ambition, compassion, hope, rage, all of those lovely things. Scion God elevates scions to true godhood, granting them a new perspective on the world's treasures and troubles. On the one hand, becoming a god represents a character ascending to lofty heights of cosmic power and influence, able to shake the ferment with their word and will. On the other hand, gods feel the grip of fate more tightly and may act in the world only subtly to prevent themselves from becoming bound in chains of myth. To that end, Scion God offers 3 main venues for gods to interact with one another and the world: incarnations, divine rule, cults, and religion. Collectively, these 3 venues form the Game of Immortals, giving structure and momentum to godly chronicles. Incarnation allows the gods to send a fragment of themselves back into the world as immortal, working to fulfill some divine mission. These can range from short-term excursions to entire lifetimes, granting a god the opportunity to remember their mortal origins and intervene in the world's affairs without risking fate binding. So fate binding is when you get sort of stuck in the loop of mythology. Tough to be Odin if you are destined to be fed to Fenrir. Divine rule provides a framework for far-reaching plans of the gods as they jockey for position within the overworld. Rather than relying on their skills and attributes, divine rules centers actions on a god's purview, calling, and legendary titles, using them as tools to construct realm-shaping miracles. Plans enacted through divine rule operate at a vast and ambiguous timescale, often tying up the gods' free legend for days, weeks, or even longer as they work to address large-scale change in their divine realms. Cults and religion help to shape a god's macro-level interactions with humanity and the world at large. From the other side of the altar, a newly risen god finds themselves cast in the role of patron to hundreds, thousands, or millions of mortals, with all the attendant influence and responsibility that implies. Cults are especially valuable as sources of interesting and dramatic challenges for ascending characters, presenting them with difficult choices and perilous opportunities while allowing them to avoid fate binding. Double checking that, yep, everything's good on that end. To avoid fate binding, that the world might readily work upon them if they interfered in person. That's not to say that gods only act through these three venues. They bring all their newfound power to bear against rival gods and troublesome titans. When the 100-handed hecaton shares emerge to, I am bad at pronouncing words, wreck a realm, the gods themselves mobilize against them in all their majesty, armored and armed for battles that will make the world shudder. But the truth is that not every day is an apocalypse unless you ask the Tawatl. The full power of the gods is often in excess to their needs and exercise the full measure of their divine authority, risks trapping them in a cycle of fate binding. New gods quickly learn why their predecessors chose to withdraw from the overt interference in worldly affairs, acting instead through means that are slow but subtle. We have discussion of the politics of the pantheon, the gods and the mortals, the Titanomachi. This is, let's see. Throughout their career as heroes and demigods, Scions often act as valuable soldiers and agents in a never-ending war against the Titans. By the time they reach apotheosis, many Scions have tangled with dozens of Titan spawn and Titan-worshipping cults. They've slain frost giants, hoodwinked Aten's lieutenants, and bargained for concessions with the Fomorians. They bring to their new divinity a vital awareness of the Titanomachi's view from the ground floor, a sense that of what it means to live in a world under threat. Many emerge into the grand halls of their astral overworld, either brimming with plans on how to end the war tomorrow or boiling over with frustration that their patrons turned peers allowed it to go on. The truth, at least as most new gods come to know it, is that the Titanomachi is a vast, exhausting, and perilous endeavor. What looked like simple skirmishes from the street could be only emanations of deeper and more complex maneuvers, counter-maneuvers played out across the world and throughout many realms beyond it. If the gods seem ungrateful for a Scion's help in fighting back an incursion, it's because there were 100 other plots at play at the same time, all requiring constant vigilance, risk, and sacrifice. It's interesting how scale differs so greatly once you get to these heights. I like how you have these characters fighting and then you realize, oh, they're just little people having wars underneath them. Reminds me of something out of Dynasty Warriors. Let's continue down here. So, we can go into the various different ways of character, story guiding, and all of that nature with Scion God. I am specifically going to be covering incarnations initially, so let's go into this. A god might send his incarnation to the world to recreate a myth, his actions firing up the public's imagination, rekindling his popularity, and drawing new practitioners to his religion. The quest may be more personal as he delves into situations and motifs that form his legend. What shapes his judgments? What aspect of love, loyalty, friendship, and family form her approach to love? If your worshippers look at you for wisdom, what makes you wise? Some gods walk the path to apotheosis once more through their incarnations, to understand how the world, and thus their relationship to it, has changed over the long years. Now, this is where I am getting some feelings of specifically Sandman if you watch the Netflix show specifically, because I'm not familiar with the comic books as much, Sandman involved a lot of dealing with humanity and like basically being a lesser aspect of yourself as you are missing, uh, at least for Sandman specifically, he was missing his specific artifacts that gave him power. He still had power, but to a lesser extent than when he was like at his prime, essentially. So, a god amongst mortals, whether you can handle a problem with a Titan spawn, or if all they want is to go check out those meatball subs from Nibelheim the kids keep raving about, how does a god incarnate? Spinning off an incarnation is mostly a matter of will. Also, you could probably do skee ball if you are watching Dogma. That would be fun. The god makes a choice, and her incarnation appears in the world. For some gods, it's not even a conscious decision. She thinks someone ought to do something about that, and in the world, her incarnation opens their eyes and gets to work. Others use flashier methods, whether it's metaphysical process or simply the need to make it look cool is a matter of scholarly debate. A god might peer into a mirror and draw her reflection forth and peel her peel her shadow from the ground. Once she's spun off, the incarnation begins to diverge from the god who created him. His experiences and memories are his own. This doesn't mean a newly incarnated person's choices and actions differ widely from the gods. His callings still guide him. The fate pushes him towards the types of people and situations he's encountered 1,000 times before. Still, he forms new friendships and attachments, and his worldly adventures might even change his relationships to his callings. Okay? Memory thieves. The god who created an incarnation isn't the only one who can absorb her memories. Other gods, even other incarnations, can do this as well. It's well known but little used practice since it runs the risk of escalating quickly and violently. Say Tez sends his incarnation to spy on a Willix's incarnation, and the former kills the latter, gain her memories. If a Willix steps in and kills Tez's incarnation in turn, now a, a Willix gets her own memories back, but also knows some things the Lord of the North would probably rather not share. Now there are other people dragged into a whole big uproar, most of the Pantheon trying to avoid such altercations, but there's always that one jerk who thinks they can get away with it anyway. Okay. Incarnations in your... Okay, so we're going to create an incarnation. There are some pantheons in this book. I believe there are pantheons in this book. There's creating a pantheon. I guess I'll bring up the demigod book or the hero book because I think there are pantheons in there I can just take. Let's do the hero book. Fix that so that it's more in line with the I do have a little bit of a problem with some white space here. I will just fix that. And did that fix that did not fix it. I apologize. Remember, this is a good stream to have your second monitor or have it minimized in the background if you want to just listen. Perfectly all right. I will not take offense. So let's take a pantheon that I at least have some knowledge of. Let's see the Netjer of Egypt. If I go down here, we can have I think it's Osiris. Let's see. Oh, I could do Set. Set's always a good one. Yeah, let's do Set. aliases Seth and Setek. So we're doing a... Oh no, this isn't interactive. Did I download the wrong sheet? Crap. Paul, again, just dropping the ball here. Download it. Interactive. Character sheet. Get it centered. There we go. So we'll just put it as set, and we'll put it as the Egyptian. And the player is Corbin, and the Chronicle is sometime in the future, possibly. I've yet to play one of these characters I make. I can't wait for Curseborn to come out and allow me to do that and be like, okay, this is the character I'm playing. In any case, so we create our incarnation. First, the players and story guide discuss what role incarnations will play in their game. Characters who will only make cameo appearances or involved in cutscene like vignettes don't need fully fleshed out character sheets. Sketch out their primary and secondary actions and use the Nemesis archetype stats from Scion Hero as follows. Okay, so we have 11, 6, 9. So these are like just like little pre-gen character type thing. So the process of their creation, a piece of the god's divinity is shed. Some consider it akin to a mantle slipping from their shoulders. Again, begins to get access to heroic knacks, boons, qualities, and flares. The god spends 1 legend to create their incarnation. This is the sign that the incarnation is precious to both a sentimental and literal matter. A god can only create an incarnation once per season and must have at least 9 legendary points to do so. If she drops down to 8 or below from spending an imbued legend, she can't spin off another incarnation until she's earned back up to 9. For incarnations that will be played alongside other player characters or take on larger, more recurring roles to the story, it's worth creating them as a full hero level character. Use the hero creation rules with the following changes. Step 1, concept. We determine the concept of the character. We have a character of set. When the incarnation is created, the world fills in the backstory for them. Determine her paths. Her origin is always incarnated. And the incarnated path is your character was, in many ways, still is a god. Perhaps you have a specific task to handle, or your divine self decided they wanted to relive the finest moments in the modern era. You appeared with everything the god you spun off from thought you'd need, and fate and the world filled in the rest. You start out with a directive ringing in your ear, but over time you figured out some aspirations of your own. What's the point of being in the world if you can't experience something new while you're here? There's a bunch of stuff mechanic-wise, but we'll figure that out later. We might not make a character specifically with this if it's Scion Heroes. I did do an episode of Scion Hero where I did create a character, so we can just cover that. If I can remember where my character sheet was, I could probably bring that up, but it has been lost to the ages unless I type in hero character sheet and it comes up. No, it did not. Well, that's how the cookie gets pulverized. In any case, step 2, you get the paths, your incarnation path. Step 5, callings and knacks. Apples don't fall from their divine tree. The character begins with at least 2 of their patrons' 3 favored callings, as opposed to regular scions who only need 1. Okay. Oh, hello, Lumberjohn. Thank you for jumping in. My apologies that I missed it. And you did ask me to hydrate, which I am out of water at the moment. I just finished it. Okay. Now, callings and knacks. So we did that one. These callings represent those aspects of herself the god feels most relevant for the purpose she's laid out for her incarnation. If the god didn't consciously spin off the incarnation, they may instead reflect the state of mind the god was in when it happened. And then for the final touch touch, the incarnation begins at Legend 1. All other aspects of character creation remain the same. From incarnation to incarnate Scion. Most incarnations spend decades in the world, meddling in mortal affairs, building legacies, and even performing legendary deeds. However, not all set out on a journey toward apotheosis, since they never experience the first visitation. The second visitation eludes them. Maybe some are content to be as their patrons made them, or never realize they can be more. This doesn't mean it never happens. An incarnation may attempt to draw down the mantle of a god who made them, just as the god Scions do. Incarnations who progress past Legend 4 and start the path toward demigodhood are no longer their patron's puppet. An incarnation may intend to walk in her predecessor's footsteps, and if she attains her theophany, surrender to the god, or she might go no contact and prepare to usurp their place in the pantheon. That's crazy. There's more to it. I'm not going to cover all of it. We've got the divine rule set. Prosaic actions within a divine realm are as effortless or strenuous as its divine inhabitants wish them to be. Mechanically, god-tier characters may choose to succeed at mortal trivialities unless they wish to make sport of it in a realm where they are native to or familiar with. This includes any additional effects generated by stunts or exceptional successes. In the world or unfamiliar realms, gods always act at scale 5, with Legend 12 gods acting at scale 6. However, intervening in the world in such a way risks the serious fate binding and warping of divine nature that full gods are prone to. So most avoid it, if at all possible. Similarly, a god might choose, for many reasons, to allow legitimate contests between their interests and the less powerful competitor to occur. Barring opposition of godly tier, however, such contests are always at the god's sufferance. There's always time to turn Arcane into a spider, or Sun Wukong to destroy the basketball court in a single bombastic dunk. Even when opposed by otherwise powerful individuals, such as demigods or mighty denizens, gods enjoy scale 5 for the use of specific boons. The true omnipotence True omnipotence is rare in Scion's world, however. Should beasts of famine and omens of hunger sweep across the hunter's realm, even they might struggle to feed their friends. No matter how fabulous the architect's sprawling palace's provisions are, if their otherworldly home is hostile to structures built on a mortal scale, they may watch their buildings swallowed up by hostile landscapes in little time as they built them. Okay, so divine sinews, approaches to omnipotence. Legends imbue them with mythic power and allows divine intent to become world-shaking action. The mantle of a god gives them many ways to do this, channeling their power through resonant aspects of their identity, requiring attention and effort which even the greatest of beings eventually have in limited supply. So there are ways of basically doing divine level actions. There's fiat. There's a variety of things down here. Personal investment. Gods imbue one of their callings with legend to obtain a result through it. A warrior may cleave an infestation of demonic serpents from their otherworld home, while a sage may instruct them in proper ethics and action to turn them into good citizens. This is a subtle approach, taking personal action without calling on purviews, or one of the great name runs the risk of detection only from those in the same realm who are able and inclined to spy on their divine neighbors. Even a realm's ruler must specifically be on the lookout for such activity in order to realize a god is on the move. So walk in silence is 1L. 1 legend. Only gods and similar beings in your immediate presence realize what you've done. This effect lasts until the end of the arc. You spent legend or for as long as you leave legend imbued. Those monitoring you may use divine opposition to try and figure out what you're up to from afar, but you always have the chance to respond. Okay, we've got a bunch of that. There is a summary called How Do I Do It? Your approach determines how you do something on a divine scale. Approaches differ in what they require to work. There's divine fiat. You spend legend and gain an effect. I'm speed reading through this a little bit. Miraculous investment. You call upon the power over a purview to act through miracles related to that purview. Okay. Sorry, got distracted. Title investment, working together. And then the subtle approach is personal investment. How long do I have to keep this imbued? Permanently solve problems that rise to the level of troubling a divine realm. Gods must keep legend imbued until the end of the arc. If it's reclaimed prematurely, the problem will either return or spawn a new similarly rated problem as the aftermath goes unattended to. Okay, so yeah, you can fix the world's problems in your other world, but be careful, because if you do it incorrectly, you're gonna accidentally release the dark elves or something. Christopher Eccleston. Deep cut on this. Divine rule place summary. Effect generated from the various approaches powers the actions that gods take. Each kind of action may have stunts or complications applied to them in addition to their effect requirement. Paid in legend instead of successes. Solving problems. Spend effect to curtail ongoing issues that exist independently of another divine being. Problems possess multiple characteristics and complications which change the cost or consequences of dealing with them. To permanently solve most problems, characters usually need to either spend legend or keep it imbued until the end of an arc. Create a realm condition. Spend effect to create important features, changes, or projects in a divine realm. To make a realm condition a permanent part of a divine realm, keep it invested until the end of the arc. And there's a lot of rules in here. We have divine opposition, where you have the following stunts that are for both characters. Enervation, you attempt to exhaust your opponent's resources, forcing them to hemorrhage divine energy. Win or lose, they lose a non-imbued point of legend, of temporary legend. Slay Force, you create a dangerous problem complication at a rating of 1 every time the stunt is purchased for your opponent. This stunt may be purchased multiple times. Okay, so if you do 3, you've just created a complication 3 for your opponent, but you technically be you'd be down 9 legend because it would be factored in there. Man. Seek advantage. For a separate action against your target or related realm conditions, which explicitly cannot be the same opposition struggle, you gain your imbued or spent legend in additional effect. Okay. That confuses me a little bit. I apologize. I'm still getting used to the scale of this. This is so much more in depth than Demigod. I feel like this is a great capstone, though, for your game. I feel like there's a Scion game currently on Onyx Path's Twitch, which we are currently on, or you're on YouTube, I think there is a Scion game that is effectively going through the various different stages of apotheosis of tiers. I think they've gone from like pre-visitation to hero to demigod, and they're heading towards God. It's crazy. What's higher than God? Is there super God? No. I think when I covered mythic shards for my YouTube channel, one of the things I found interesting was how they did the setup for God tier characters, because instead of it being uh you play for like the mech game, instead of you playing as a God character, you have a God mech that is basically in control of a lot of lesser mechs, a lot of like hero tier and demigod tier mechs. Same with God tier of 4 color. God tier of 4 color, you were basically, I guess you were playing maybe the cult and religion aspect of the game. We'll be covering that next, don't worry. We have a divine conflict summary here about realm leadership, rulership, uh, stuff about the purview mastery. The master of a purview gains additional effects when wielding it, and attempts to wield it against them costs additional legend. So if you have the judge purview or something, I forget, going back to purviews. So we have a purview of beast or death. If you have the purview of death, maybe if someone tries to use death against you, it will cost them an additional legend to use that purview against you. To do harm against another divine being, generate at least 3 effect with an approach other than divine fiat, spending rather than imbuing legend. Okay, so you're actually spending. Your target may oppose with divine opposition as normal. Divine wounds. Certain kinds of conflicts, hazardous problems, murders. Divine wounds target one of the god's titles, purviews, or callings. Barring stunts or other abilities, the affected god chooses which trait suffers the wound. Until the wound heals, you cannot use the relevant trait for divine realm actions. The legend imbued to maintain effect is immediately lost, along with the results of that effect. Okay, if I go back to the character sheet here, that's birthright. Is there an injury? I don't think there's injury. Okay, yeah. So if you look here at this character sheet, you can see that there are. Oh, let's go to the interactive one. You can see that there are check marks, check boxes next to like firearm skill, your paths, your deeds. Actually, deeds maybe not so much, but going down to the calling and the legend title, you can actually check off your title, showing that it is either imbued or maybe injured, possibly. Be nice. Interesting way of doing things. So your character will lose access to parts of their like purview, their purviews or their various things if they take divine wounds. Gods and men, while a god may hide such wounds from lesser beings with little effort, peers are harder to deceive, and an injured deity who doesn't act subtly must prepare to use divine opposition to stop an overly curious divinity from discovering their condition. Gods and mantles are resilient, however, God automatically heals 1 divine wound at the end of each episode, and the god healing themselves or others with an appropriate approach needs to imbue legend until the end of the episode to cure additional divine wounds. Okay? Continue on here. Lovely art, by the way. And we have another little summary of this. I think I really like that there are summaries for each of the different mechanics. I like also that they're spelled out in more direct, like more detailed ways. So if you need to figure things out, these little charts are really good. Story guide and divine rule. Divine difficulty. So, as a story guide, you may ask yourself, by all gods and denizens and divine realms, how do I run this? Play at the level of divine rule requires serious buy-in from everyone at the table. Before a campaign turns to divine rule, story guides and players should discuss what they're interested in exploring with the systems. Do players want to hatch elaborate divine schemes and change the face of the world and others alike? Does the story guide want to present realm-shaking threats that the characters need to exhaust the very core of their divine abilities to defeat? There's a lot of potential space to cover, and checking to make sure everyone is on the same page changes the divine rules scale of play is just as important as it is at the very beginning of the... Making sure everyone's at the same page is just as important as in the previous games. If a player character wants to oppose Zeus in all his divine works, the story guide needs to know Zeus's particular divine particulars, and that aforementioned mighty works will need to be tracked. Once you've had all those talks, how do you provide stats for the mighty heads of the pantheons? I apologize that I'm so tired. I was on a call with India earlier today. Had to get up way early. Okay. Since divine rule actions use legend, anything a character does that engages with the system represents effort and opportunity that can't be used elsewhere. Story guide should give latitude to players throwing their divine weight around. Many things God do don't raise the level of divine rule actions, and it's fine to let players style on fools with their divine might through piles of scale once in a while. So effect 1, problems and conditions are the sort of thing that a determined demigod might be able to solve on their own. Horrific, community-destroying monsters that don't dare challenge the gods directly. Social curses and contagions which vex and bedevil mortals, but which a transcendent saint or teacher might undo, and natural disasters which only great heroes can overcome, all qualify. Effect 2 is stuff that covers something a demigod can normally manage, creatures that would blight nations in the world or cause consternation to the natives of the overworld, disasters that might end civilization or leave lasting marks in celestial realms, and society-wide malignancies. Effect 3 are problems and conditions that have reached the point where even the heroic efforts of multiple demigods can't rectify them. They rarely manifest in the world unless actively created by a god or some similar force. In other worlds, creatures or other independent threats at this level can become de facto rulers of great swath of a realm unless a god steps in. Supernatural dangers and effects will totally reshape life for those affected. Man, there are more than this? Okay, effect 4 concerns most of a small realm or large portion of a greater one. Unless actively concealed, every god in the other world will be aware of them. Effects of less scope but similar intensity can directly challenge the salient features of a given realm and region. The creatures and individuals at this level are often actively contained or courted as allies. Threats and conditions at Effect 5 are the greatest powers, dangers, effects in the cosmos not actively being cultivated, supported, or spread by gods or equivalent beings. World-ending terrors if they run rampant. Supernatural effects that could rewrite the very fabric of lesser beings and their surroundings. And social effects that might transform a society into a form utterly alien. This reminds me a lot of stuff like Lavros from Chrono Trigger, and I'm currently playing through Digimon Cyber Sleuth, where the Eaters are kind of like that. They are these beings that are eating through the world. Effect 6 and greater threats and conditions solely result from the actions and powers of gods, titans, and similar beings. They always represent a major investment to create and unleash. Man, it's crazy. I kind of like Divine Rule. I feel like that's probably I feel like Incarnations is probably the level of play that I would normally play with other people, but Divine Rule seems like a very interesting way of playing. Cults and religion. Ascendant into godhood irrevocably shifts the way in which a character relates to her faithful. No longer a beneficiary or a symbol, she becomes a true patron to her cult in whatever form they take. At its core, the relationship between a god and her cults is push and pull of solving problems and spreading influence. Every cult represents a god with 100 tiny problems that might need her attention. And there are some examples of things like basically giving favor to the cult. Let's continue on to sort of after apotheosis, a god's cult becomes simultaneously a powerful asset to exert pressure on the world without risking fate binding, and yet also a tremendous responsibility, constantly competing for her attention. The specifics may vary from cult to cult, but one commonality is that most cults believe they are fundamentally right about what their god wants, a belief that is usually skewed, imperfect, or outright wrong. I love doing that. I've had cults in D&D games and Call of Cthulhu games where they basically don't understand what their god wants and are evil. While they're evil, their god might not be, but what they're doing in their god name is considered evil. Might be well, depending on where you are standing. What worship feels like. Heeding the faith, heed the faithful. The story shot. Once per session, a god may attend the prayers of their worshippers, searching for interesting or valuable information. So the story guide can provide a brief overview of the condition of her worship across the world. Afterwards, the player can ask additional questions, such as, where is my worship currently most vulnerable? Can my intercession have a greater effect right now? What new story are my worshippers telling about me? Things of that nature. If the god either resolves an issue related to a prayer or capitalizes upon opportunity presented by it, she regains one legend. Gods currently attempting to claim supremacy within a realm or over a purview can treat fulfilling an appropriate prayer as one additional point toward their victory instead. There's discussion about the different types of cults. You have the covens. Many gods have a nasty surprise after apotheosis, discovering that covens, newly formed in her name, suddenly expect things from her constantly. What might have been a refreshing moment and transactional to a Scion ally suddenly becomes an incessant buzzing to a godly patron. Okay, in general, gods interact with their covens through binding agreements that define what the god requires of her coven and what the coven may require of the god in return. These deals almost always become a fate binding, drawing the god back into her coven's orbit, even if she wishes to renege on her original promise. To their credit, then, covens are typically motivated and easy to mobilize in response to problems. I'm reminded of Agnes Nutter from Good Omens, where she she was able to be mobilized pretty effectively, or at least her family was, because they all followed her nice and accurate prophecies, which they should have probably wrote down in multiple books. I feel like they did. I'm not sure. They do have common fate bindings associated with the various different types of occults. I'm not going to go over each and every one of them. We do have New Birthright Creed. While occult birthright reflects a deep connection with a single specific group of worshippers, Creed represents a god's efforts in crystallizing her worship into a cohesive whole. It ranges from 1 to 5 dots and offers the god increased influence and control over how she is worshipped and perceived. If you have 0, you have no more. You're basically at the whims of all the mortals. Each dot of Creed Birthright can be used to purchase one of the following benefits. Tenant. You create a tenant, a statement about what you will call upon your worshippers to do. Always repay your debts. Double check your sources before sharing rumors. Fuck turfs. Followers increase their attitude toward the tenant by 2 steps. Then you have rights. You gain access to a new motif for your marvels based off of the rituals and practices used in your creed's worship. You may reflexively invoke a marvel through this motif at no cost. A brand. You can increase the starting attitude of characters associated with that occupation or role by 2. Oh, so it's like your brand. Oh, I'm the god of actors or supermodels. Suddenly, I have a better attitude with those people. Image. You have solidified a clear image of yourself in the heart of your worshippers. It strengthens your legendary titles. It can also absorb an additional divine wound before it loses its benefit, but you suffer complication 3 on any action that uses it. Interesting. That's a weird way of doing things. You have religion. I guess various different forms of running your religion. Oh, there are even rules for using this with dragons. That's awesome. I love an image of a dragon fighting. That's awesome. We get that access. Anyway, let's go back to the religion section. I skipped that a little. Let us state that the multiplicity as the truth. Multiple religions, all true, all myths alive in tandem with each other, much like humans. When we speak of religion, we speak of belief, worship, and ritual acts of the various pantheons that exist and pervade the world. This is the preference because it is important to note that religion itself is mostly a Western scholarly concept. A single definition of religion cannot be applied to all cultures. The scholars of the world are more connected to the truth of their roots. If anything, the idea that all religions grew out of animalism has become an oft-mocked paradigm. Ways to categorize religion. Now about the act of worship. Worship can be thought of as a ritual act that comes from religion. Though worship, the gods are adored or properly shown reverence, and so that their followers would not invoke their ire. So we have. I feel like I'm now a professor of anthropology or religious studies now. Religion is active. Religion in the world is an active force for the gods. Through it, they make themselves known and can spread their influence even further by capturing the hearts of more people, whether it be through their own deeds or pervasiveness, perseverance, and faith. of those that work within their religion itself. Gods being worshipped also have an impact on their worshippers. As the adage goes, as above, so below. We have the various things, how religions form. There are not really many mechanics in here compared to the other sections. Forming your own religion. Building your own religion can be tough, but an easy way to do this is to start with a small group and adhere to one of the family resemblances. If it has a family resemblance, such as a moral code or proper ritual for the sacred and profane, then it will be treated as religion. These religions can grow wider and wider, strengthening your power and ever-expanding mantle. Even expand your mantle. Be careful, however, as more worshippers gain a strong sense of your identity, fate will bend to justify their true beliefs. Whenever a god seeks to begin a religion, they must first decide whether they are doing it for their own or doing it with their pantheon or band. Or maybe they're reaching out for the moon and creating their own pantheon, one that would score the heavens with zeal and match even the greatest competitors in the celestial realm. Sometimes fate is fickle, and so loves watching chaos unfold. Okay. There's ending a religion. A pantheon without gods might eventually find new gods. However, without worshippers, a pantheon would be able to find a way to establish another religion in another region. From what has transpired in the past, the only true way to end a religion without the possibility of fate allowing it to blossom again is by exterminating both the worshippers and the pantheon at the same time, which is a nigh impossible feat, but impossibility is but a hurdle in the realms of gods and the games of mortals. This reminds me of the God. What was it? It was the Oblivion Wars in Dresden Files. It's only talked about in short stories. I don't think it ever got talked about in the main books because basically the idea is there are old gods that if humanity knows that they exist, the gods will gain power in the world. And what the Oblivion War is the goal of destroying any reference to those gods, so much so that they will delete it from the collective knowledge in the library. Which basically means no one will ever remember what that thing was. I did have one person say that was a spoiler, but also it never gets talked about in the Dresden Files other than in short stories form, so I don't know if I would call it a major spoiler. Anyway, the topic of religion is no doubt sensitive in some areas. Some places see their belief or their ritual simply as a way of life and not a religion in the sense of monotheism or henotheism. They are right, of course, and this is why the term religion cannot be applied to every belief, or if you wish to do so, it must be defined properly. As a god, one might use the fickleness of infighting of religion to gain a foothold in the cosmos, or they might be able to grow one of their own, perhaps beginning from a cult where they were still but a hero or a demigod. That is a good way to start it off. If you're playing the game, I can see starting off as a hero who's built up like followers and things of that nature, and then your followers can then expand your cult out. We only have 5 minutes left, and there is a section about creating a pantheon. We have Legend 9, we have Legend 12. 11, the creation myth is the final most important part of forming a pantheon, and it works differently than the steps that came before it. I'm not going to be able to cover all of this, but I thank you all for sticking around for this long to find out more about Scion gods. We do have various godlike powers, which we talked about earlier in our previous episode, which is about a month ago. Crazy to think about, but we have you have knacks, you have you have birthrights, you have fate binding rules. When you attempt to avoid particular fate binding, you get divine wounds. Basically, you lose access to parts of your character, such as your purviews and your legendary titles, things of that nature. Let's look at some antagonists. I really do like looking at divine antagonists. Oh, I closed that. I should not have closed that. So we have some variety here as far as the antagonists go. You have the primordials, exist within yet outside of every pantheon. They came before the pantheons. They embody basically the air, earth, night sky, things of that nature, the world itself. When they deign to rise from their resting places to fight, even gods pay attention. We have godheads who are avatars of gods. Goliaths are a character is any target that, reasonably speaking, a character cannot disable or destroy within a scene. Things of that nature. Let's look at some of these. We have Apep, otherwise known as Apophis. So we have that as a dangerous deity that's out here. We have Apeth cultists. You might be able to just hand wave against one and just kill it, probably, if you're a god. Because remember, there's scale that we're dealing with here now. I assume that talking about these characters, though, they're probably a lot more tough than what you would normally see. You have narrative threat. The threat is 0, only seeks to eat the moon. Narrative scale of 5. Okay. Oh, wait a minute. So are these like headers? They might be headers. I might be reading this wrong. So the narrative threat and god form are all part of Bakunawa. And then so a variety of these have different stat blocks in here. So depending on if you're dealing with them in it personally or they're like representative. Interesting. Umibozo. Man. Any case, thank you all for watching. I hope you have a good one. Again, Curseform Kickstarter finished. Exalted, side reel, specifically side reel. Charting Face course is coming out Wednesday, so check that out. It's been a wonderful month, I feel. Here's to hopefully another wonderful November. Hopefully. Probably shouldn't have said that for the recording, but we'll find out together. I hope you have a good one. Thank you all. Have a good night.